Hey there, everybody. Welcome to Thursday Throwdown. It's the cage match, but we're not the ones in the ring. We got Congress in the ring. They're fighting each other. The funny thing is, so I'm wearing my CrossFit. It looks like a boxing t-shirt, but Adam is the one that is actually a martial arts guy, which is really awesome. But we are not fighting each other. We're actually trying to help you fight to stay open. And so I'm going to stop sharing. Welcome to you guys. One thought hit me this morning on my run. Can you imagine if we had employees that treated each other the way that Congress treats each other and gets nothing done? They would be fired, So it's like, and yet they are supposed to be working for us. I don't know. So anyway, I can't do anything about that, but we can do something about your questions on PPP. And actually, we got a few questions already that have come in. So everybody that's on here, you know the drill. Hit the Q&A for questions. You can harass us on the chat. Before we launch into questions, Adam, any thoughts from you before we move to Jack? Because I think Jack actually has a video.
Yeah. So, a couple things. We're going to do an example of the employee retention tax credit here after Jack shares something that he wanted to show us. But the things that have come up this week, obviously this appears to be when I say obviously, this is the week that's all about the tax credits and their relationship with PPP. So we're going to hit the tax credits pretty hard today. And hopefully the example is going to help out for people that are on the webinar that watch this afterwards. I think the other thing with respect to the 1.9 trillion, that's with the T, right, Jack? $1 trillion stimulus package. There's no document yet for anybody to analyze. So all we've got are kind of summaries of what we think that's in it. So from a business owner perspective, there's really not much. I mean, look, I'm all for the stimulus. So when I say this is not Adam Boatsman, U.S. citizen saying this. This is Adam Boatsman, advisor to business owners saying this. There's not a lot of good and nothing but bad potentially in the stimulus package, in the sense that there's some very limited additional funding for businesses to help pay for PPP and restoration of business operations, a little bit of a charge up to the PPP funding beyond what was passed. But then the negative side of it is, although you're getting a tax credit, which again, we'll talk about in this webinar, you get a tax credit. They're talking about making it mandatory that you continue with the Family Medical Leave Act provisions that were in place last year. And while they were silent on it, one would assume that would mean that they would go ahead and do something with the employee retention tax credit to go and extend that as well. So, there's not a lot of there. It really seems to be all around making sure that workers are funded and continue to have a source of income, whether that's a stimulus check, increased unemployment benefits, or otherwise, having us keep them on the payroll while giving us a tax credit for doing so. Everything else in the package really is related to individual stimulus or something related to getting states money to help out with vaccine distribution and testing and schools getting started and stuff like that are reasonable and appropriate, because that's got to get done. And states have a balanced budget. They can't go into debt for stuff like this. So to me, that kind of makes sense. In terms of the size of stimulus, if you think about it, the math actually works out pretty well in the sense that, people are like, it's just crazy. The first round of stimulus checks were, $600 each. And that resulted in a $900 billion package. So about half that were the checks. So if you say, well, this stimulus round, is going to be over 2 times that, a trillion of the 1.9 trillion is literally those checks. So, that's where the big dollars are at in this thing. So anyway, that's what I got for now.
Groovy. So a little bit of lawyer humor is coming up here, I have a feeling. So Jack, before we get into more of some of the details, because I know we've got a bunch of questions already, but you have something to share with us?
Now, I would be surprised if many people on this call haven't seen this. I mean, it started out with one of my partners sending it to me 2 nights ago, and I just laughed my butt off. But you've probably seen this. And can you, let's see. All right, now I don't know if you're going to be able to hear this if I hit play, but let's see. Can you guys hear it at all?
Yeah, a little bit.
You might want to. Did you hear me, Judge? I can hear you. I think it's a filter. It is, and I don't know how to remove it. I've got my assistant here. She's trying to, but I'm prepared to go forward with it. I'm here live. I'm not a cat.
That is the best line. I'm not a cat. Yes. But I mean, the movement of the eyes and the mouth, I mean, it's just, and the patience, the longer version of this is the judge being very patient and walking him through how to turn this off. And it probably was like his grandchild or someone who turned it on. So, which I just think is hilarious. So, okay, let me see if I can give you back control of the video. So, okay, stop my share. Okay.
Living in COVID Zoom age.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yes. Well, let me throw some statistics at you before we start. So, and I printed this out in small print, so I got to put my glasses on. As of yesterday, and this is yes, yesterday. So, highlights of the SBA program, that it hit a milestone of approving 103 billion PPP funds to more than 1.4 million small businesses. They're reaching more of the small businesses, 80% of all loans going to businesses requesting less than $100,000. They're reaching rural communities, which is 28% of businesses, and then some other stuff. Now, what we talked about last week was that the banks are experiencing issues with processing your applications. And so what has happened is, and as I said, that the accounting industry professional organization went to Congress and wrote a letter or two and said, here are the problems. And so in reaction, and they give credit to the industry group, basically says that, well, what's happening is it goes into the system, a bunch of error codes come back, so it can't get processed. So what the changes are, lenders can certify eligibility of borrowers for first draw and second draw loan applications, even though there are the errors. And so basically they're going to turn off the bounce back and let it go through. Allow lenders to upload supporting documentation with these errors, potential errors, and then create additional communication channels. So basically what they're doing is they're punting it down the road a little bit and saying, well, we're going to let it go through, but on the forgiveness side of things is when we're really going to make sure that it's legit. These were put in place so that to try to reduce the amount of fraud that was going on in the loan application process and the distribution of funds to lenders or to borrowers on the front side of it. So that is directly from the SBA. There's other information regarding the details of the issues, but directly from the SBA, it's on their website if you want to learn more about it as far as what's going on. So when your bank tells you that we're having a problem processing it, it's probably a legit response, but hopefully in the very near future, they'll be able to push it through because the SBA has turned off the hurdles essentially on the front end of the applications going through to the SBA for approval. So that's an update on that.
So that validates a couple conversations I had yesterday with Adam Krasinski at PNC, and then last night with Thomas McTeer of UCB. And Thomas went on ad nauseum, and not in a bad way, but we talked a lot about last night. It's just been a train wreck for them. And everybody knows it's not just them. So, and it is the SBA, but that's really good. So actually what I'm going to do, I know Adam has a chart he wants to share, and we will do that. But I thought what we would do is we go ahead and jump into a question that pertains specifically to this. So Robert, you're in luck because your question kind of goes right into this. So the question is this: for a business that missed applying for PPP round 1 last year, they recently applied and received their first draw this week. Are they permitted to apply for a second draw now? Their banker told them to apply in 2 weeks. Hopefully the the chaff has worked its way through the system. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea there was that if you didn't get the first draw and you should have, you can get it. And then at some point you can get the second draw, and you're presumably getting money to reimburse yourself for expenses that already occurred in the first draw. So that's the theory anyway.
And I'm not aware of any like no application zone or timing that you have to wait a certain amount of time. It may just be more of a practical comment that, you're not going to get anywhere, that there's already stuff in the queue. So just wait a little bit of time to clear out the queue. But kind of the counter argument is, well, get into the queue at that point. So, but I'm not aware of any requirement that you have to wait any period of time before you can hit them up again.
Cool. Real quick question, and before I go into a few of these other ones that came in yesterday, is COVID testing employees considered an eligible expense?
That's a good question. I can't remember all the eligible expenses off the top of my head, but considering that PPE is considered, I would make it an assumption that COVID testing is, especially as you have medical expenses that are qualified.
Yeah, I think it is. What I'm not sure about is, there's different types of testing, the rapid testing, and then, so obviously the more intrusive, or I should say analytical the test is, then the more expensive it's going to be, and as far as implementing it, et cetera. So don't know if there is a limitation on that to a reasonable amount, the common denominator being, the least expensive but most efficient. So not sure about the details on the amount, but I think it is covered, as Adam said, as part of the whole COVID, covering expenses in relation to COVID response for employers.
So this is for you, Mike. You are actually the early bird, but you're going to be a little bit later. So hold on, because we have a very specific chart that deals with ERTC in particular. So I'm going to jump ahead to Susan. She said she's working on PPP loan forgiveness application. A few questions. One, since we have a choice of 8 or 24 weeks, must our time period be exactly 56 or 168 days? They pay semi-monthly. Payroll records are for 60 days. Must I reduce everyone's wages by 4 days or a percentage thereof? That's first question.
Well, remember that on the calculation of payroll costs, it didn't match, like the specific dates associated with the payroll weren't directly related to when the employee actually earned the money. Meaning, like, if you paid somebody 2 weeks in arrears and you paid them at the start of your covered period, you got to include that payroll, even though it was for time that was earned before the covered period. At the same time, if you paid people, same set of facts, if you pay people 2 weeks after the end of your covered period, you got to include that payroll that you paid 2 weeks after the end of your covered period. So it's not, basically you get to do it both ways. You get the benefit of what you paid coming in, even if it wasn't earned, and you get the benefit of what they earned, even if you hadn't paid it, on the way on the way out, as long as you pay it within a specified time period. So there's no, there's no like mystical math problem that you got to do here.
All right, the second question is related. We were funded on April 20th, received over 150,000. Is it best just to go for the 168 days and not worry about it? What are your thoughts?
I mean, it's all going to depend on facts and circumstances. I would just go with the period that's going to have you have deployed the money in ideally the 60-40 ratio, and if it's some other ratio, then that's fine. But I would just use the period that allowed you to fully deploy the money.
So this has to do with the calculator that we released early. So it says, I'm reviewing your forgiveness calculator. It's for 8 weeks. It looks like it can be used for 24-week forgiveness as well. Yes. And Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, I remember talking with Matt Pugh about this, and we haven't updated the calculator for external use. We've updated it because there have been so many iterations as Congress continues to change and add things and subtract things, et cetera. So we have not sent that out for public distribution. Anything you would add to that, Adam?
I mean, the core of the calculation in the spreadsheet would not have changed really any, because they didn't publish any new guidance on how to calculate an FTE or anything like that for this purpose. The only thing they really added with the updated guidance from the date of the publication of that calculator was you could include some more expenses in it than originally anticipated, and then B, you could use something in between the 8 and the 24 weeks as long as you prorated everything else with it.
All right, this is actually kind of a shout out, but I thought it was interesting. This is from Harvey in Honolulu, who tunes into this thing, but not live because I think it's a 6-hour time difference. So I wouldn't either. So we had responded back to a thing, and he had said, from an article I read, limit I'm using is below. So basically each quarter I can use a max of $10,000 of wages and qualified healthcare costs per employee, which equates to a max credit of $7,000. So if all employees work both quarters, I can get a max of 14K credit for the 2 quarters combined. And it was talking about the CAA increases maximum credit to $7,000 per employee for each of the 2 quarters in 21. This is done by providing a $10,000 maximum in each of the employees' aggregate qualified wages and qualified health expenses for each quarter by increasing the credit to 70% of the employee's qualified wage and health expenses for that quarter. So anything that you would want to add to that, Adam?
Other than this was related to the employee retention tax credit, which we're going to go through an example of.
Exactly. So as we get ready to tee that up, I'm going to deal with these questions with Mike so that we address them, and then I'll screen share that document that you've done, that spreadsheet. So 2 questions. On ERTC, we'll have greater than 20% decline in gross receipts in Q1 of 2021. So we're now eligible for the credit. My understanding is the credit will end following the first quarter, for which our gross receipts are at least 80% of the corresponding quarter in 2019. So does that mean that no matter what revenues we have in Q2, the credit will end on June 30th? That's question 1.
Let's just go through the credit, because that's going to be germane to the example.
Okay, cool. Then I'll just read the question for the audience, and then we'll go into this. And this has to do with FFCRA tax credit. I thought what you said last week made a lot of sense. Can you give us a quick summary of what we should do to get started in terms of organizing our records to prepare for retroactively claiming the credit going back to the beginning of the pandemic? So I'm going to go ahead and screen share and get this thing up for you, Adam. All right. Can everybody see this okay?
Yeah. All right. So I just want to be clear that this is speculative only, but it is shared by some other pundits out there because the IRS has not actually released guidance on what to do about their credit retroactively, other than you can get it, and you can get it if you applied for and used PPP funding. So the scenario applies to a 2020 scenario, but could also apply to 2021 going prospectively forward, assuming that you get PPP round 2 funds. So, in this scenario, there's been, again, it'd be hard to actually meet this fact pattern given the other qualification criteria, but let's just assume you did so people can understand the relationship. So I've got my covered period, I used 24 weeks, business was terrible. I'm down 50%, so I qualify. I haven't hit the resumption up to 80% in 2020, so I'm still qualifying. And over my 24-week period, I spent $1 million, and I had $500,000 in other payroll costs. So in terms of my PPP application, lines 1 through 8 are $1.5 million. And based on the original application criteria, since I only used, 2.5 months as my calculation amount, I got $1 million. So in this scenario, because I got to use the 24-week period, I still kept a lot of the team intact and used it all. I actually spent more than my PPP loan amount. So my total payroll costs that I could have had, given that I spent $1 million, meant that I could have had $1.67 million associated with loan forgiveness. So loan forgiveness is, the lower of what you spent or the loan amount. So in this case, the max forgiveness amount is $1 million because that's what you were loaned. So what that effectively means is that since the max forgiveness amount was $1 million, you've got some payroll potentially on the table still. So how do you determine that? Well, if the max forgiveness was $1 million and you only needed to spend 600 to otherwise qualify, and you already had enough other costs to cover because you spent 500, and you only needed 400 of that 500 to get to your 60-40 ratio, then in theory, you've got $400,000 of payroll costs that could potentially be eligible for the employee retention tax credit, assuming that you still met the 100, employee criteria if the people were still working, or if you're above 100, you'd send them home and they couldn't work for 2020. So the problem is, so this is what me and the pundits think in terms of the relationship to PPP covered periods. Now, if you were outside of the covered period, already spent the money, and then you were going to apply for the employee retention tax credit, of course, that's going to qualify because that's outside your covered period. So this really gets to, what do you do about stuff that was in the covered period where you spent more on payroll than you otherwise had to get to your maximum forgiveness amount based on your loan size? Me and the pundits and the other pundits that are out there, I promise I'm not the only crazy one, thinks that there's some credit associated with that, which makes sense because you kind of did the right thing and still continue to pay a lot of people, even though you technically didn't have to. However, the IRS has not released any guidance on this. So this is the theory of how it could work. And at the same time, this is why we're asking people, unless their business is on life support, to wait a little bit longer until the IRS issues guidance around this relationship with funding for going backwards. So same concept would also apply to the FFCRA, which is the Family Medical Leave Act associated tax credit, which I'll get into in a second. Now, in terms of Mike's specific question about, hey, I'm down in 2021, kicking the credit, remember what you're technically doing in this case is like you prospectively think that you're going to be down in Q1, and we're getting pretty close to the finish line in Q1. We got a month and a half left, so likely it is that you probably are. However, what you're really supposed to be doing in order to take the credit now is it's technically Q4 2020 against Q4 of 2019 as your comparison period, to qualify for the safe harbor, to go ahead and begin reducing what you have to remit on your federal tax deposit. So that's how the credit shows up. Credit shows up, either on the payroll tax return itself as a credit towards the next payroll tax return, or alternatively, you can just be shorting your deposit as you go along. But that's going to be based on you kind of flagging and saying, hey, I got the safe harbor based on Q4 2020 relative to Q4 2019. Or if you're only in business in 2020, it's Q4 2020 relative to Q1 2020. With respect to the next question around, yeah, but if we don't ever, get back to normal, does that really mean that the credit ends at the end of June? Yeah, I mean, that's the way that it reads now. That's why at the beginning of the call I said speculatively, I could see them also extending the employee retention tax credit as well. However, I have not seen anything in any of the commentary around the stimulus package that they're going to do that. So who knows on it. So with respect to the FFCRA, with that, a lot of people kind of forgot about this one. So in this scenario, same thing has to apply. You have to spend more on payroll than you did on PPP funding, and any dollar above that is available for the credit. But, effectively, if you let people, stay at home because they had COVID and you still paid them and you didn't make them take, sick leave or PTO, that money qualifies for credit. That's the common one. Same thing as if they had family members that you had to take care of, or childcare was shut down. Those are the more common scenarios. The lesser known scenario is the case where, while my employees could work remotely, so like Jack and I are good examples of this. So we don't technically need to be in the office. We could be working remotely, as could all of our employees. If, however, it's not really possible for me to work a full schedule based on my facts and circumstances, like childcare, taking care of people, and I can only work part-time, that gap period is the period that would potentially qualify. If I could only put in, even though I had teleworking available, but due to facts and circumstances, I could only put in 5 hours, not, the 8 that I was expecting, then the 3 would be the part that would qualify. So in terms of, getting ready for this, first off, it's voluntary going forward through March, I believe. And then part of the impending legislation is they would make this mandatory. So going forward, you just want to make sure that you tell your employees, hey, that FMLA thing is still available to you. Just let me know. If you didn't let the employees know that they qualified for FMLA, remember, I'm not going to be disbarred over this, so Jack probably can't say this, but I can. What you would want to end up doing is, going through your records, making sure the employee was aware, and making sure that you properly classified those days or that time. Ideally get something in writing from the employee saying, hey, in retrospect, I was applying for FMLA during these time periods. And then go ahead and amend your payroll tax returns, which your payroll tax provider should be able to do for you at your request, once you got identified, the amount that you would qualify for, which would really be based on going backwards in your record keeping to make sure that you get something. And you can stop sharing.
Excellent. And if somebody wants a copy of that, here's what you do. When we put this thing up on BGW CPA YouTube channel later on this afternoon, fast forward to that area, stop it, do a screen grab, and there you go. So, little technology hack from a non-technology guy.
That's right. We did have a suggestion that came through on my on my text that I should put on a cat filter, kind of permanently during these webinars to keep it fun. But it's kind of what I was hoping Jack would do, but he chose to do the filter instead. So
yeah, I think that
I agree. It would be more fun.
That would be funny. All right. Well, we've had a pretty good crowd today. Anybody have any additional questions? I knew we could count on one from Robert. I had a feeling we could count on one from Mike. You guys did not disappoint. It was good to hear from Susan as well as from our friends at Han Blue in Honolulu.
Yeah, it's funny. My Hawaii connection, I did a job reference for a former employee who is looking for a job in Honolulu, ironically. So that's 2 references to Hawaii. I guess it's a sign that I should go there.
Yes, Mitch, this is blood on my shirt. Yeah, I got hit in the nose one too many times.
I was wondering that when you said it was related to, didn't you say it was a CrossFit shirt?
Yeah.
Yeah.
14 fitness.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Another question came in. Oh, Vicky, so good to see you here. If you didn't know about mandatory leave policy during 2020, but paid employees anyway, you can take the credit anyway now, right? What's the best way to go back and clean up your records?
Well, I mean, you may have just missed the tirade, Vicky, but it's exactly that. I mean, you'd want to go backwards and just identify those people that you did pay related to that. I mean, you'd have to figure out how to identify them. I suppose there's multiple ways you could do that. You could send something to the employee saying, hey, would you let me know, for my own records, or you could kind of make your guess and have the employee, verify for you. But either way, you would want to go backwards, button up your documentation. And in my opinion, get something from the employee that specifically states, yeah, I was requesting it during that time period that we mutually agree upon. Versus you could take completely on yourself to make a guesstimate. It's just you're not going to have any corroborating information other than your best judgment. Not to say that would get overturned. It's just the best scenario, if you didn't do it at the time, would be to go backwards and get mutual agreement with the employee that you guys both agree that was time associated with FMLA.
Cool.
And I didn't see Jack frown on that, so that means that he also didn't say his employment law people aren't saying, get that guy off, cut his camera off.
My hands are figuratively on my forehead at this point.
Yeah, I got you.
He's looking for the cat filter.
Yeah. You can't disbar me if I'm wearing a cat filter.
That's funny. All right, this is from Josh. One quick one for PPP Draw 2. Are we still bound by meeting FTE numbers as it relates to 2019 comparison period? Or do we get safe harbor by spending 60% of the payroll regardless of FTE numbers?
It's a good question, and I don't know if I can stall long enough to see if Jack can find the answer to that. But I think my operating assumption would be you would end up meeting the same safe harbor criteria that you did in round 1 for the same time periods with the same sort of safe harbor exceptions. Meaning like, hey, I'm still down. I still try to replace the people and all that, what have you.
Yeah, so my recollection is that the forms are the same. And so the modified forms. And so if you're using the full form, it still has, the adjustments for FTEs, et cetera, on the full form. But then the rules that apply to the less than $150,000, the less than $50,000, all those rules apply as well. So the form is still, so if you go to the section on the SBA website, which houses the forms, and you go to second draw, it still sends you to the same 3 applications, whether it's the full, the S, or the EZ. I think it's 3508 is the form number. 3508, which was revised as of last month.
Besides your youthful appearance, that's another reason why you're on here, Jack.
Well, thank you. That filter's working on the screen. That one that says modify your appearance or improve your appearance. I think it actually says improve your appearance on this setting in Zoom. So all good.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that we're supposed to have this much fun with an attorney, but I'm sure having fun with having you on this thing, Jack. Hey, can you believe it's been 11 months of us doing this? I mean, seriously? God.
Well, just as a reminder that when I first reached out to Adam and to you, I was like, hey, if you want some legal perspective, and happy to share. Thought it was going to be 1 or 2 days. Didn't realize it was going to go on and on, or that you would even want me. That I guess I didn't screw up enough for you to kick me out.
The bar was low.
Yeah.
Yeah, you asked. Thank you.
While we're waiting for questions, there's something that has been on my mind because it seems to be happening more and more often in the area of scams. And this is unrelated to PPP, but it's with regard to trademarks. So I know that a lot of you have some really cool trademarks that you have protected potentially with the feds. So federal trademark registration with the USPTO. In years past, we've seen some aggressive companies that will offer to help you with your renewals. And some of the ones are fraud, like the ones that come in from China, Taiwan, et cetera, and say, hey, you have a mark, someone's trying to use your mark. But the ones that I'm more concerned about are ones that are generated from a company here in the United States that has a post office box with a Washington, D.C. address that uses an emblem that looks very official, with a bald eagle, and it's the U.S. Trademark Association, U.S. Trademark Office. And sorry for the barking, my puppy just woke up. So the scams are getting more and more legitimate looking as far as, pay this fee, do this and that. And the thing is, it's not a fraud. It is, hey baby, it's legit. So I'm gonna have to handle that. But so, if you're working with an attorney, great. If you get this piece of paper that says you need to do these things, or else you're going to lose your trademark registration, and they are doing this like 18 months in advance before the owner has to do anything with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. And so it's really frustrating to see these people taking advantage of them, and they make it so urgent that something needs to be done immediately with this, and it doesn't. So just, happy to, if any of you get that, just send it to me and I can tell you whether it's legit or not. So legit, but unnecessary. And it's usually more expensive than, doing it either on your own or, through an attorney essentially. So I'm not trying to upsell you. I'm just telling you that you can do things on your own and not have to pay these fees 18 months in advance, because actually you can't even renew them until it's 12 months in advance of your actual renewal date. So sorry for the little tirade, but I've seen over the past 2 weeks, just clients saying, is this legit? Is this legit? And so I wrote an article about it years ago. I may do a refresher article on that just because it's so prevalent, it seems. So anyway, little distraction, tangential.
Well, actually, it kind of makes sense because when Adam talked about this actually on March the 17th, a year ago, he wants to do these webinars. I'm like, dude, we are all stretched so thin, especially you. And he goes, but I'm answered the same question 15 times a day. This will actually help me. Well, there you go. So you got a forum for it. So any other questions out there? You guys have been great. Thank you for the harassment, Mitch, and for all the Gupton land clearing you're doing out there. We appreciate it. Still have my hat, appreciate it. I'm gonna leave you guys with this, and then if this spurs anything, you guys can hit us with another question or whatever, but this is kind of interesting. So this guy, Philo, said this like 2,100 years ago, but I think this would be great for all of us to remember. Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. Isn't that the truth? That is the truth. So I wish Congress would take heart to that. They'd have to read versus yell, but it would be nice if they would do that. So anyway, in the meantime, thank you guys for joining us. Any parting wisdom or thoughts yet from Adam or Jack?
No, I mean, other than, I know this one was a lot about tax credits, but I'm just going to belabor that point that, it is real money. And it's one of those things where, since you technically didn't have to pay it out, a lot of people might think, it's just too much of a hassle factor. I mean, but for a lot of our, for a lot of clients who we did the early analysis on, when there was still some uncertainty around whether or not there'd be an exception on PPP funding, the employee retention tax credit was actually going to yield more money with no risk. So, it's real dollars. I mean, at the end of the day, 7 to 10 grand per employee. I mean, that's a lot, kind of with no strings attached. So FSCRA off the top of my head, I think is $4,000 or $5,000 per employee. So it's worth going through the trouble of evaluating the qualification criteria and then going backwards and looking to them in payroll tax returns, because it is good free money that's out there that totally, in my opinion, is worth the hassle factor. This isn't chump change.
Great point. Jack does not have the cat filter on. I'm more of a dog guy anyway, so I like the dog filter.
There you go.
Happy filter.
The real thing. So my parting comments are: find what makes you happy and go get it, like that.
That is no longer a puppy.
Oh no, it is not.
So fun. All right, we'll leave it with that because I don't see anything else coming in. Everybody, thank you so much for what you do. Thank you for being on here, and hit us up if you have additional questions, especially PPP stuff, FAQ@trustbgw.com. You can also copy me, GFREY@trustbgw.com, GFREY@trustbgw.com. You guys have a wonderful day. Appreciate you. We'll see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. What's the dog's name?
There's a long story behind it, but it's Ray, R-E-Y, but it's Ray of Sunshine is her AKC name.
Oh.
And the kids call her Raisin. There's a long story behind that because they call the other dog Pickle and her name is Fudge. So
Ray.
Yes. So
Beautiful.
Ray. She knows her name. And we call her Palpatine or Skywalker, depending on her behavior. So
yeah, go for Skywalker.
okay.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.
See you, Barry. Bye.